Carly Simon tells who she wrote "You're So Vain" on. Would you be surprised if I told you that many of your favorite songs had real-life inspiration? Perhaps not. After all, not even the greatest artist exists in a vacuum. So let's take a journey down memory lane and learn about the tales behind the tunes, the people behind the hits. Some, as one would expect, were lovers. Others were loved from a distance, and a few may be more difficult to define. Several of the artists were brave enough to use the person's true name in the song, while others were more cautious. However, each of them produced something absolutely remarkable. Every artist needs a muse, an inspiration, or someone or something to spark their creativity. Keep watching to learn the tales behind some of the finest works of art ever made. We guarantee you'll be pleasantly surprised. Uptown Girl by Billy Joel. Billy Joel was finally over his recent divorce, which is much simpler to accomplish when you're a world-famous rock artist, so he dated 19-year-old supermodel Elle Macpherson, and then he dated and finally married Christie Brinkley, another supermodel. He seems to have written his big single Uptown Girl with Elle in mind at the time, but by the time it was published, Christie was the woman in his life. Thus, she appeared in the video. Billy is portrayed in the song as a not-so-rich downtown man attempting to romance an affluent and cultured uptown girl. He originally intended to call the song Uptown Girls in honor of the numerous wealthy and attractive women he was around at the time. Billy claims that Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons had an influence on the song's style, and that it's easy to understand why. Billy Joel, one of the most popular artists in history, has spent decades reinventing himself. His 1983 album An Innocent Man, which included Uptown Girl, as well as other enormous successes like Tell Her About It, The Longest Time, and others, is among his best-selling and most regarded. It's famous for its exuberant feeling of optimism, and it's an homage to the popular music genres of his childhood in the 1950s and 1960s. Lady in Red by Krista Burgh. Krista Burgh composed his big 1986 hit song as a parody of the ordinary man's inability to recall what his wife was wearing when they first met. Lady in Red lovingly recounts the day Burgh first met the lady he was destined to marry, Diane Davison. Lady in Red was the second single from his 1986 album Into the Light, and it catapulted him from a hardworking but largely obscure niche musician to massive worldwide success almost overnight. The video, which featured a woman in red, garnered extensive rotation across all video platforms. Since 1986, Krista Burgh's career has been intimately tied to the film Lady in Red. It's a song that arouses both positive and negative emotions in those who hear it. It's one of the most beloved and despised songs of the 1980s. MacArthur Park by Richard Harris. Richard Harris's 1968 tune, MacArthur Park, was a great success. The sophisticated time signatures and overall complex structure enhanced its traditional, easy listening style. Few people would have known that singer Jimmy Webb's protracted and traumatic separation served as an inspiration for the song. Susie Horton had been Webb's girlfriend. Because he worked in a neighboring office building, they would often spend their time at Los Angeles' MacArthur Park. The lyrics just chronicle Webb's sentiments and views as we go about contemplating his love and its dissolution. As popular as Richard Harris' original 1968 rendition of the song was, it paled in comparison to Donna Summer's cover version in 1978, when she was at the pinnacle of her career. It was a #1 success and one of the year's biggest singles, set to disco music. Later, in 1993, Weird Al Yankovic made a spoof of the film titled Jurassic Park. Love of My Life by Queen. Freddie Mercury, the famed British rock band Queen's main vocalist and leader, composed the song Love of My Life for his ex-fiancée and closest friend, Mary Austin. It first appeared on the band's legendary studio album, A Night at the Opera. Mercury was 24 years old when he met Austin, who was 19 years old at the time. They told reporters how they had an immediate connection and quickly fell profoundly in love. They divorced after 7 years of living together as a couple. Mercury said that he was attracted to guys, and Austin verified that she knew he was a homosexual. Despite this, the two remained close, and Mercury even purchased Austin an apartment directly down the street from his to keep them in close contact. Austin eventually moved away, married and had 2 children, one of whom was Mercury's godson. The majority of individuals have difficulty comprehending the nature of their connection. All my lovers asked me why they couldn't replace Mary, Mercury once said, but it's simply impossible. Mary is my soul buddy, and I don't want anybody else. She was my common-law wife. It was marriage for me. We have faith in each other. That's all I need. I couldn't fall in love with a guy as I did with Mary. You may have a taste for their complicated relationship in the film Bohemian Rhapsody from 2018. Shine On You Crazy Diamond by Pink Floyd. The renowned 9-part rock tale Shine On You Crazy Diamond was composed as an homage to Syd Barrett. Barrett was a founding member of Pink Floyd and served as the band's main guitarist, vocalist, and lyricist for many years until being asked to leave in 1968. Barrett, however, left a longer shadow than the surviving band members imagined, and in order to exorcise their demons, they composed this 25-minute-long masterpiece in his honor. He mysteriously entered the studio and sat down as they were working on the recording. For 45 minutes, none of his old bandmates recognized him since his look had altered so significantly. After Barrett left Pink Floyd in 1968, it appeared impossible for the band to continue without him. It was just unique for a band to go on without its initial creative genius. Surprisingly, bassist Roger Waters stepped up and took up songwriting responsibilities, sharing lead vocal duties with new lead guitarist David Gilmour. Tears in Heaven by Eric Clapton. As the 1990s began, Eric Clapton endured heartache and tragedy. Clapton's manager and 2 other people were murdered in the 1990 helicopter disaster that killed his buddy and fellow artist Stevie Ray Vaughan. Only a few months later, Clapton's 4-year-old son Connor was killed when he fell from the window of their 53rd floor New York apartment. Clapton felt the need to isolate himself for a period of time in order to maintain his mental health. When he was ready, he started working on the music for the film Rush, which he co-wrote with the song Tears in Heaven with lyricist Will Jennings. Music, according to Clapton, was a wonderful source of healing, joy, and pleasure for him. Clapton has been an advocate for child-proofing domestic risks since the loss of his son. Eric Clapton, a rock legend and pioneer since the 1960s, had unexpected success with the quiet, understated ballad Tears in Heaven. It's his best-selling hit in North America and one of his most successful singles. Shortly after it debuted, he recorded a live acoustic version for MTV Unplugged, which was also a huge success. And I Love Her by the Beatles. Paul McCartney is widely regarded as one of the greatest composers of the 20th century, and his love ballads are among his most successful works. The first to get widespread attention was And I Love Her, a song he said was his first ballad that he was proud of. Jane Asher, his then-fiancée, inspired it. Asher was a photographer and actor who was a big part of the British cultural scene in the 1960s, and the press was obsessed with her and Paul's affair. But it wasn't meant to be. Within a year, they'd split up, and Paul eventually married Linda Eastman, McCartney, the real love of his life. Jane Asher was the inspiration for a number of songs, not just And I Love Her by the Beatles. There were many, including We Can Work It Out and I'm Looking Through You. Following her divorce from Paul, she met and married artist Gerald Scarfe, to whom she has been married for nearly 40 years. You're So Vain by Carly Simon. You're So Vain by Carly Simon was a #1 smash song in 1972, and for almost 40 years, debate and conjecture have raged. Who's the song about? One thing Simon has made plain is that the 3 lyrics are about 3 separate, egotistical individuals, and the second stanza has long been thought and understood to be about actor Warren Beatty. In fact, he continues to insist that the whole song is about him. Carly disputes that her ex-husband, musician James Taylor, or Mick Jagger were the song's inspirations. Both were accused of orchestrating the song. Music business executive David Geffen was also mentioned, although Simon claims she never met him. Other names that have been mentioned as being vain enough to inspire You're So Vain include David Cassidy, Cat Stevens, and David Bowie. Since the 1970s, Carly Simon has been a prominent figure in singing and composition. She's made many comebacks and has remained relevant long after many others have faded into oblivion. Along with You're So Vain, her best-known songs include Haven't Got Time for the Pain, Coming Around Again, The Stuff That Dreams Are Made Of, and Let the River Run, for which she received an Oscar. I'm Your Boogie Man by Casey and the Sunshine Band. When a very successful disco pioneer sings "I'm Your Boogie Man," one might be excused for thinking he's singing about himself. However, the song was composed in honor of someone to whom the band thought they owed their success. A DJ from the band's hometown of Miami first played the song "Get Down Tonight" on the radio. It'd go on to become their first #1 song, catapulting them to the pinnacle of disco success. The idea for Boogie Man came from a DJ named Robert W. Walker. In 1973, Harry Wayne Casey, KC, formed Casey and the Sunshine Band as a disco and funk ensemble. By 1975, they'd scored their first of 5 chart-topping successes, the latest of which ushered in the 1980s, which would also mark their demise. Disco reigned for a while, but the reaction was harsh. Chelsea Hotel No. 2 by Leonard Cohen. Chelsea Hotel No. 2 from Leonard Cohen's 1974 album New Skin for the Old Ceremony is one of the most remembered early tracks. In it, he details a one-night affair with a lady who is ultimately revealed to be rock singer Janis Joplin in startling detail. Since Mark Twain lived there, the Chelsea Hotel in New York has been a popular temporary lodging for traveling artists. Cohen used to enjoy entertaining his audience, not just with the song itself, which is explicit enough, but also with the narrative and name that inspired it. He would eventually repent of the locker room mindset that drove him to Kiss and Tell. He believed it was improper to link Joplin's name to what he had done, and he apologized to her ghost. Leonard Cohen's status as a music industry icon was far from certain in 1968. His one record had not performed well at the time, and he was already older than most recognized artists. That's when he began staying at the historic Chelsea Hotel. Who knows? Maybe he found the inspiration he was seeking in the ambiance and Janis Joplin.